game and a win to top it all off for the Saints. Here's Drew Brees after the game.
Listen, it was special. Everything about the night, you know. I don't know how they pick. I don't know how they pick them, right? Monday Night Football, playing the Colts, right? The team that, you know, we won the Super Bowl against 10 years ago. So the whole Super Bowl 44 team is back for the 10th anniversary, and obviously national television, you know, big game, and now, you know, that record in the balance as well, and just kind of makes you shake your head, you know. Just, are you kidding me? You know, I'm not sure how we got here. It just, you know, kind of makes your whole life and career flash before your eyes.
Colts were like, anything we can do to help you, no problem.
Yes.
Drew Brees.
Did you see how his exposed neck? It was just uncomfortable. Like I don't know what that T-shirt was. He would have looked much better in a turtleneck.
Had my blazer. He
that's
good.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right, Nick, let's talk about Drew Brees, and then we'll get to where the Saints are right now. Where does Brees rank right now all time among quarterbacks?
Well, it's such an interesting question because we talked about this a little over a year ago when Brees passed, I think it was Peyton Manning, maybe 2 years ago actually, on the passing yards list. And you can, statistically, he has the profile of one of the 2 or 3 greatest quarterbacks ever. He's got more touchdowns than anybody now, more yards than anybody, more completions than anybody. So the 3 things quarterbacks can do: complete passes for yards, and then complete passes for touchdowns. He's done more of that than any quarterback ever. He and Brady might catch him in touchdowns. It'll depend on who plays longer. But he, Brady, Peyton Manning, and Favre are basically the top of the mountain statistically across almost all statistical categories. But Brees isn't in that class quite. And even with another Super Bowl, I don't think he'd be in that class, because there's one thing that the other modern-day all-time greats have, which is a period of time where we all thought, oh, that's the best quarterback in football. And Brees, despite his brilliance, and his story is unbelievable. This is a guy who won Comeback Player of the Year, not coming back from injury, coming back from being bad. He got benched in 2003 for Doug Flutie, and in 2004 he wins the NFL Comeback Player of the Year award. He then in 2006 has to go to a new team because in the first 4 or 5 years of his career, he only had 1 outstanding season. And starting in 2006 to now, that's when he's gone on this unbelievable run. But if you're talking about modern era quarterbacks, there's obviously Brady right here.
Yep.
But then that next tier to me, Peyton Manning, Joe Montana, John Elway, not only do all those guys have multiple Super Bowls, but all those guys at one period of their career were the clear-cut best quarterback in the league. That next tier, I think, is where Brees is, along with Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre, Dan Marino. But even those guys all have one thing Brees doesn't: a league MVP, multiple first-team All-Pros. So it's really difficult to slot him. It's almost, to cross sports, a Ricky Henderson situation. You know where you're talking about? Or even maybe Hank Aaron's a better example. I don't think anyone talks about Hank as the greatest baseball player ever, but you look at the numbers and you're like, why is he not in the discussion? Because he was probably never the best player playing at that time. So I'm not trying to take anything away from Drew, but that's, to me, he's on that 3rd tier of modern greats, which is nothing against him. It's ahead of Big Ben. It's ahead of our friend Troy Aikman. It's ahead of some other guys, but it's not with Peyton Manning. It's not with Joe Montana. It's certainly not with Tom Brady.
So I had him at top 5 all time, but I do think it's modern era quarterbacks because we are living in a new age. And I even think if you went back and pinpointed it to 2004, 2005, when you saw the pass interference rule change, which really was the Peyton Manning rule, like the NFL Competition Committee, which Bill Polian was a part of, and had say, hey, he had 4 interceptions the AFC Championship game. They changed the rule. All of a sudden, that's when you really saw an explosion in the passing stats in the NFL. So you really almost have to look at everybody a little bit differently, because these numbers, as insane as they are, these are all going to be broken down the road, because Patrick Mahomes, like longevity does come into play here. But I also feel like you love LeBron, and the one thing LeBron doesn't have to catch MJ is the rings. So I want to make sure we don't do that with Drew Brees, because he only has 1 ring. Like, we're going to hold that against him. And I think that's an easy thing to fall victim to, is that all of a sudden you say, well, he's never been that. And the fact that while he was playing, Peyton Manning was ringing up 5 MVPs. Well, neither one of us would make the case for him over Peyton Manning, but he's sure got to be right there with him.
But let me ask you that, because let's just say the Saints win the Super Bowl this year.
Right, then he'd match him,
Just
too.
give it to him.
Yep.
He's obviously not Brady, right?
No.
He's still obviously not Peyton Manning, even though they'd have the same number of Super Bowls. He beat Peyton in a Super Bowl, and he has all the records. I still think eye test-wise, when those two guys were playing, they played in the same era, Peyton was better, right?
Yes.
Joe Montana, to me,
I have him over.
John Elway, who went to 5, 1, 2, and his numbers are a guy who's an example. The numbers aren't there.
Right.
So there's 4 modern era guys already.
But see, I don't have Elway ahead of Drew Brees because I look at the way some of these guys played. That's why I have an irrational reverence for Dan Marino.
Sure.
Because I grew up down there. I was friendly with him. Got to know him. So I might be a little bit too loyal to Dan Marino. But if you look at the lack of weapons that he had, didn't have a run game, and they really relied heavily on the pass. Like if John Elway didn't get Terrell Davis at the end of his career, he doesn't get those Super Bowls, and we might not talk about him the same way.
So,
you know what I mean?
But if you have Marino up there, but that would mean Brees, because top 5. The thing about top 5s is there's only 5 people.
Right.
So Brees
I had him at 5. I had
Brees is
Marino
ahead
at
of Brett
4.
Favre.
Yes.
Ahead of Aaron Rodgers. Ahead of obviously Steve Young and Troy Aikman.
Yes.
Okay, so you've got him ahead of Elway. So you go Brady, Manning, Montana, Manning. Either way, Marino.
I have Brady, Montana, Peyton Manning, Dan Marino, Drew Brees.
Yeah, and I think for all these discussions, we're almost better off doing tiers.
Tiers, you're right.
Because like I have him in the tier with Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre, and Dan Marino, because then we end up arguing 4 versus 7 versus 6.
Right.
So if it's about the eye test, or if it's about who's MVP, or if it's about who's the best quarterback at any one time, there it is. Should numbers not matter? Why are we even keeping stats then if it's not about it? Because if statistically, he's right there.
Well, but so it's all of it, right? So it's for these discussions, it's partial winning, it's partial stats, and it's partial eye test. Drew Brees has done enough winning to get in the conversation.
Absolutely.
He hasn't done so much winning that it ends the conversation like with Brady, but he's done enough to get in the door. If you don't have any winning, then you have to, the eye test and the stats have to be so overwhelming like Marino, you force your way in, right? Yep. With Elway, he did so much winning that it kind of overcomes the eye test part, or not the eye test, the stats part.
Right.
So he went to 5 Super Bowls. So it's kind of what's the word? A combination is the word I'll use of all of it. His stats are an A+++. The eye test for me is very, very good, but he's just hurt by the fact that he came in right after Favre, who won 3 MVPs. He played during Rodgers, who's won multiple MVPs. Brady, who's won 3 MVPs. Peyton Manning, who's won 5. So even things like all-pro teams, he's only been the first team all-pro quarterback once in his career, which is maybe it's the era is working against him. If he had come in the mid-'80s, would it be different? I don't know. But that, to me, is always going to hurt him on this all-time rankings.
I think, too, the record that impresses me most, and this is a title he can have in his own right, the most accurate thrower of the football of all time. And that's backed up statistically, with the completion percentage. He's going to go down with the highest career completion percentage, the single season completion percentage, and now the game completion percentage. That, to me, is a title that's worthy of its own category, and he's got that bar none. I'm telling you, Nick, Jenna, I played, 7 years in the NFL and watched a lot of practices where you're just playing 7-on-7 with no defense on the field, and you had starting quarterbacks